Guys, it's Abby here with High Five Practice, and I'm so excited to bring another week of Let's Eat with Abby. Again, it is 12 p.m. Central Time every week on Facebook Live right here. Only, as you guys know, when I say eat, I mean something a little different other than food. I mean educate, automate, and target. And today I'm so excited to bring a very special guest. I have Pete with me with the Recall Pros. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Abbey.
How are you today?
So good. It's going to be a hot one here in Utah.
Oh my gosh. It's been raining all day here. It's been kind of dreary. So I actually envy you.
Blue skies in the high 80s. We'll take it.
Yeah. Rainy. I'll take it any day. Any day.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pete, for those that don't know you, I know we're going to talk a lot about using the phone calls and how powerful that they are. I know it's a traditional way of doing marketing and reaching out to people. So we'll dive more into that. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Recall Pros.
Yeah. So again, my name is Pete Sylvester. I'm the CEO of the Recall Pros. We're based out of a small town in Utah called Springville. I actually grew up in the state of Wisconsin. I'm a Midwest guy and was happy as a clam to get rid of the cold. And I'm sure, again, you can appreciate the humidity. I moved out of the crock pot and I moved into the oven. So I just have a lot of dry heat out here. But yeah, so I have been in Utah for about 20 years, and 15 of it I have been running call floors, helping data centers get built up, whether it be in the dental industry or in a variety of other avenues, whether it's finance or teaching people how to make money online. But really, my aim has all been around call floors for the past 15 years.
I just think that's so incredible for you to bring in this type of experience of being on the call floors and then now having it focused specifically in dental. But a lot of times, people think of phone calls and they just think, oh, I can never get somebody on the phone, or it always goes to voicemail. So when I talked to you before, it was just such a fascinating conversation about the power of phone calls. So why do you think phone calls are so impactful today with everything that's out there?
Great question. I would say the reason that the phones are becoming more and more effective is because it was the first thing people left from. And we went to this digital world where everything was email and text, and that is so effective and it is efficient, but you lose that person-to-person connection, especially in the dental community. There are DSOs that are growing across the country, and that's a great movement, but there's a lot of small dental practices all across the country that they are a part of the community. And the text and the email, yes, it's efficient and it's helpful, but you're pulling yourself out of the community. So putting the phones back in, it's that connection to the office. It's the connection to the community that keeps the office relevant, really.
Yeah, it makes total sense because dental, we are community-based, right? Everybody's always talking about that personal touch, that one-on-one conversation. It's just a matter of getting them on the phone, right? And making sure you have a presence in all these different types of avenues. And everybody responds differently, right? Like you're going to have people that prefer email, prefer text, prefer the phone call. So it's just a matter of making sure you have a presence on all of those different types of communications.
Yeah. And really the phones are usually the one that you have to stay most committed to. It's a time crunch. You can get together an email in an hour or two, and then you can send that out to a bunch of people. You can get a mass text written and you can send that out to hundreds of people right away. But part of the reason that people aren't efficient on the phone is they're not committed to it. They'll throw out 10, 15, maybe 20 calls in a day, where when you're in the call floor industry, we run everything off of analytics. We can't make a single decision unless we know the stats behind it. So we can come in and we can say, when you make 100 phone calls, this is the response that you should make. Well, when these dentists are in their practice, they don't know who's making those phone calls. They don't know how often they're making those phone calls, what time of day they're making those phone calls, because so many people in the office have 20 different projects that they're supposed to be running that, hey, if I get 10, 20 minutes, I'm going to call when I get a shot. Oh, and by the way, I'm trying to accomplish 3 or 4 different goals at the same time. You just aren't dedicating the time and the energy into it that you need to make your phone time effective.
Absolutely. I love this because it's so true. It's, everybody has their own purpose, their own focus in the office. And
Yeah.
and if there's too many that you're trying to juggle, you're going to drop something. And it's just what comes at risk for that, right? So we always talk about that for email and text too. If you're not going to be the one sending it out or creating those effective emails and text messages, who is and how are they going to be effective? Because if you're not having an actual goal, if you don't have analytics to track the results of that, it's just going to be lost. And then you are wasting your time, right? Like let the professionals do it, let the professionals handle it. And I think that's what's so interesting about having you guys take over the calls and making sure that there's a goal. So explain what exactly you guys do at the Recall Pros.
Yeah. So what we actually do is when we get signed up with an office, we set up a goal of how many appointments they want for the month. And then we set up a HIPAA compliant screen share software where we can actually jump right into the screen share or right into the computer. We grab their recall list and we start at the top and we dial all the way to the bottom. And a lot of people don't think that's a big deal, but that in itself, we don't know the patients. So the reason that's so helpful is we call everybody. When you have people in the office and say, okay, we've got 10 openings, call people. They're going to call their favorites. They're going to call the people they think will pick up and they've had good experience with. If there's somebody who they had a bad experience with in the office, they don't want to call that person. But we don't know that. So we call and we schedule everybody. And hey, you know what? If there's somebody who had a problem, we take down those notes. We send that straight to the dentist and say, hey, this person won't schedule because of X, Y, and Z. If they don't know that, the dentist can't address the problem. They can't reach out to them and fix it. Or if they need to fix some stuff in the staffing or on how things are running in the office, if the office is choosing not to call a potential headache person, you'll never fix the headache. Yeah. So we can come in and we dial between the hours of 4 and 8 because that's when people are home or they're getting home from work. They're not in a position where, hey, I'm at work, I can't touch my phone, I can't receive my text messages. We call when they're home, when they're available. And since we have them on the phone and because we've already remoted into the computer, we just put them right into the calendar, right there. We block it off, we make it a pro fee, we make it a perio, whatever it is. And then at the end of the night, we send an email to the office manager and the dentist, and that it's broken down into 3 sections. 1, these are the people who have been scheduled on these certain days so that the manager can go back in and they can add in their bite wings, they can add in x-rays, things like that. And then we've got a section of patients that need to be deactivated. So this person moved, this person got new insurance, this person had a bad experience at the office. That way the office can audit their list. So they really have an idea of how many patients they're really working with. And then lastly is just patients that need extra help. Hey, I would love to come in for a clean, but I can't because I know I need wisdom teeth pulled. So I send that over the front desk or the back office. They pull up in my email. They say, okay, Kathy Sue needs to get wisdom teeth pulled. Let's call, let's schedule that. We don't charge for any of that. That's just information about their practice that they need to know. So we're here to do all of that outreach so that the office, 1, is full, but 2, so that the dentist and the office manager have a pulse on what's going on with their patients. And again, we're calling everybody. We don't filter it and say, well, this person had a bad experience, so we don't want to call them. We want to find out what the problem is. Can we get them back in? I would say we probably average about a 75% rate with people who have had a bad experience. We talk to them, we figure out what the issue is, and we can still typically get them back in there depending on what the situation was. But we have a really, really high success rate of getting people back in that have had bad experiences. But just in general, we get about 35% of the people that we talk to on the phone back in their chair.
Wow.
That doesn't happen during the in-office time. Yeah. I've talked to many, many consultants and they say their best conversion rate has been 25% if they're lucky. Okay. But again, that comes back to times you're calling.
Yeah. And what times are you guys typically calling? You do
4 to 8. 4 to 8 is when we do most of our calling. So typically the offices are closed when we're calling. Some of them stay open for a couple more hours. That's great if they're open 4 to 6. But we do most of our calling when the office is closed.
And it's true too, the fact that it's kind of like you're doing a consult or like an audit, you're able to really find we like to always do surveys, right, to kind of get perspective from patients, but it's this other party perspective. But the patient just thinks you're with the practice. They have no idea, or your callers are with the practice, right? But really, it's just an extension of the practice to be like, hey, we're going to go in, and this is our focus. This is what our goal is to book appointments for you, even when you're outside of the office and you get to go home to your family. We're going to sit there and make those calls because that's when it's going to convert the highest. In order, you get to come in the next day with a full schedule and not worry about it. Right. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And we're all performance-based. So we bill out for appointment that we schedule. So if we call for a month and we don't schedule any appointments, the dental practice doesn't pay a dime. We're that confident with our ability to get people into the calendar that we do all of our work pay by performance, and we don't have year-long contracts. It's month to month. So if you're looking into the future and you say, hey, in 60 days our calendar is looking sparse, we can call and we can schedule for those 60 days out. And then we can scale back and we can, call for fewer appointments the month following that. We even have some offices that use us as like a last second, hey, tomorrow fell apart. Let's have the recall pros call and see what they can fill in. Because again, I hold our team to really, really strict standards on how many outbound calls they make in an hour. If my team is making 30 outbound calls in an hour and I can put 3 agents on a list, that's 90 outbound calls in an hour. That doesn't happen in office. You can't staff that and be that efficient. It just doesn't happen. Never mind the fact that if they're in the office from 4 to 6, if you have people trying to make outbound calls to schedule, all you're doing is tying up a phone line. Yeah. So if somebody is calling in the office, they got off of work and they want to be a new patient, that line is busy because you're trying to make a recall. Yeah. We don't call on their phone lines. We have our own phone lines that we set up. So every time that we're calling, they're getting outbound calls and their phone lines are still open.
And the fact that nothing wrecks your day more than you come in and you find out you had these cancellations and you've got to fill it, and that's your whole morning when you already knew exactly what you were going to do that day. Not anymore. Now I can't claim insurance, call these patients back, make sure to book for future appointments. I was supposed to call Susie about XYZ. I promised her I'd call. It's no longer going to be your day's wrecked. You have to solely focus on, and I think a huge thing that gets missed is, are you training your team to actually be converting sales? They are sales. That is, I mean, everybody's sales in a sense, but they are sales to the fact of you are trying to get your visits in. And sometimes it's a hard thing to wrap your head around. But if you're trained properly, or if you have a team that's solely focused on how to work the phones, how to convert those to appointments, it's a different ability and that's a hard task to take on. And the fact you guys are trained in it, right? You're the professionals, you're the experts in that field.
Yep. I mean, anybody who doesn't think that being on the phone is a skill, I say, come on into my office, try and make 40 phone calls in an hour, schedule people, be in multiple calendars, know multiple people's rules of what can or can't be scheduled. Come on in and try it. Because like you said, we're talking people into coming in and setting appointments. Some of them haven't been into the dentist in 2 years. That's not an easy pitch. Yeah. They know they're past due. It's been 2 years. They know they're past due and they know they haven't come in. But you know what? 99 times out of 100, the people who haven't been in for 2 years, they just keep taking those mailers and chucking them in the bin. They take their texts, they delete them. They use the excuse that, I didn't get your email. It went to the spam folder. It's a whole different response when they have to talk to somebody on the phone that says, I looked at your records and you haven't been in 2 years. Let's get you scheduled. There's a completely different demeanor. Yeah. And at that point, what excuse can you come up with? You can't. And a lot of these people have insurance benefits that pays for their cleaning. So, in the latter part of the year, we can call people up and say, hey, you know what? You got insurance for the rest of the year. Let's get your cleaning in. It's not going to cost you anything out of pocket. That's great. And people will start to book like that. And when you can get people on the phone, that's way more effective. And they answer the phone in the evenings. So that's where we come in to pick up, the slack.
Right. Absolutely.
And again, like I said, we're all paid for by performance. So really, I get the question of like, well, what's my risk? There is no risk. If we call for a month and make 1,500 phone calls and we don't schedule anything, hey, it was a great effort. We'll try again next month, but you don't have to pay anything because we didn't accomplish anything. And that doesn't work in the office.
Right.
If that person sits on the phone and they dial for a month or 2 months and they don't schedule anybody, that payroll still has to get paid.
Mm-hmm. And you probably you burned a lot of leads or potential patients, and you just exhausted out that employee. If that was a great employee, just because they're not able to work on the phone doesn't mean they have an expertise in something else that you might have just, drained them out of. And now you're hiring and firing somebody else just to fill that slot where, there's nothing to lose at this point as far as, I think that is the hardest thing to get your hands around is phones, right? Like we have high success in emails and text messages, but there is that demographic that prefers phone calls. And if you're losing out on that, and again, the pressures on the front or other team members, that's a lot of potential that could be wasted if it's not done correctly, especially if it comes down to time, if it comes down to being trained. So I guess what's like the biggest holes that you find that people do for the recall?
What do you mean? Sorry, I don't understand your question.
No, that's totally fine. So, I mean, when you think of, that's what your guys' sole focus is, right? Mm-hmm. It's like hygiene and making sure that there is recall filled. Where, based on a lot of practices approach that you have seen with recall approach, where do you think there's a lot of holes that tend to slip through the cracks?
Without a shadow of a doubt, we do the job nobody wants to do.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of cliche, but honestly, nobody wants to work the phones.
Yeah.
No, I mean, a hygienist is going to tell you, I went to school to be in somebody's mouth.
Yep.
So I don't want to be on the phone. And then if you talk to people, in the front desk in the back office, their list of things to accomplish would stress anybody out. Like, if you don't know what your people at the desk are doing, take a look at their responsibilities of what they've got to get done. Nobody wants to be on the phone. And like I said, they cherry pick who they want to call. We had an office not too long ago that the dentist and the office manager, they were psyched. They said, hey, let's get the recall pros on this. We just had our staff tell us that they can't figure out what to do to get people into the chairs. So they called us. We called for 2 days. We scheduled appointments at a crazy, crazy high rate. I think we actually had like an 85% schedule rate.
Wow.
And we had found out, we went into their open dental and nobody had made an outbound call in 6 months.
That story blows my mind, because I know you told me about that a few weeks ago too, that you could go in and to the dental practice, to your very point, when you have a lot of duties going on, like when you have, as an office manager, we've been running surveys with our own clients to kind of figure out what all is actually on their plate. And the amount of stuff that they have to handle. And when you ask, did you make calls to help fill the availabilities? They're going to say yes, whether that was 1 call, 2 calls. But if you're asking how many, or actually having a specific goal of you need to make this many calls, they're going to come back to you and say, that's not possible. But, like, what do you want to drop? Right. So there's that focus of making sure that, okay, well, we need a team to do this, a team of experts. But to go in and then just see that there's nothing, I'm sure they had every intention in the world to do it. And sometimes they even fake themselves out to think like, oh, I did that. Yeah, I called, I was on the phone. But you were making outbound calls. That's a huge difference.
Well, and they don't have analytics. They don't know the call floor industry well enough to understand that you want to be running optimal, just like a vehicle. Like, there is a time of day. I mean, with a car, if you drive your car at night, the concrete's cooler, so you get a better grip. I'm not a car guy. I'm just throwing out crazy stuff like that. But when you think about it, that same thing extrapolates over to calling. When is the best time to reach people? What is the best verbiage to use? How do you, when should I be calling families? I don't want to call a person that's 35 at 2:00 in the afternoon. If I'm reaching out to a patient that's 75, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. They're likely home. They're likely not doing something. But to call a 35-year-old who you assume, on the sheet I mean, we make some assumptions that they've got a family and they've got children and they've got insurance and they've got a job. That would tell me they're probably out at work. So I'm not going to waste my time calling that. Right. We call at the most efficient time. I know how many dials need to be made an hour. If you know that you're going to schedule 10% of your appointment or your outbound calls, 30% pickup, you schedule that 30%. But if 10% of your 100 calls are going to schedule, what happens if you do 50 calls in a day, sporadically gapped out? When is the best time to call? You don't know, because you're not calling 50 calls in the morning, 50 calls in the evening. Is it best to call between 2 and 4? Is it best to call between 8 and 10? You don't know, because everything happens so sporadically on the floor, because there's so many tasks that have to get done, and they have to, be on their feet at all time to be able to jump from project to project. Oh, I have to go check on insurance for this person. Oh, I have to go check this person in. Oh, 3 phone calls came in. Oh, I'm supposed to do some recall calling. When am I supposed to do that? We don't have any of that distraction. We run as efficient as we possibly can. If I have a dialer that can't make the appropriate amount of phone calls, no harm, no foul. I just got to get somebody else. Yeah. Because everything is run off of analytics.
That's how you have to be strategic about things. You're an expert in this field. Like, you have to know that quantity and quality is going to make this happen. It's not just, and if it's something that you don't feel like an expert in, you're going to push it off. You're going to avoid it, to your point. Like, you're not going to want to do it. If it's the one thing that can drop off, yeah, I made some calls today, but I don't want to actually be the person making those outbound calls. And you make that judgment because it's not as frequent of, oh, the 2 people I called didn't answer. Nobody answers anymore, blah, 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 blah. And it's, no, you have to actually have a lot more than what 2 people did, and they're completely different demographics. You're not going to find trends that way. The analytics are based on consistency and trends, but you can't justify that with a few people that you call and be defeated and then be done.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 20 people, you can't pull analytics off of 20 people, 20 calls, and there's a different approach to somebody who was in the office 3 months ago and a person who was in the office 36 months ago, but we have to call them both. So we have to be prepared to answer those kind of questions and get a different level of commitment with different people. Right now, with the way that COVID is working, we're actually reaching out to people who have left the office, didn't schedule appointments, and they were just in 3 months ago, because we're so effective with the way that we call that people have been backlogged for COVID. We're booking offices full for 3 months. So now we're reaching out to the people who are going to be due in 4 months. And we say, hey, I know you were just in the office 2 months ago, but we're already booked solid for the next 3 months. If you want your 6-month appointment on time, schedule it now. Because in 2 more weeks when we call you, that spot won't be open and you'll be out 8 months from your last cleaning.
And that's why some of these are so critical too, to not only just have like a call floor doing this for you, but people that actually understand dental and understand those needs, understand those timelines, only make it more efficient and make the patient believe that you actually are with the practice. They don't know any better. They just think it's a person from your front calling and letting them know that. But it's so true. COVID kind of messed up all these timelines. You're shut down for 2 months. You have to block out. We always tell practices, they're like, I'm booked out. Don't send any campaigns. What are you booked out in? Your doctor's schedule, your hygiene schedule? And what does booked out mean? Like, you're solid for this month, for 2 months? Because guess what? If we're not proactive, we don't want to react and just start, like you said earlier, doing the night before. We want to avoid that, right? Like, if you can avoid that, let's plan accordingly. But obviously have a backup plan if that happens. Great. We can call pros and do the day before too. But it's just this formula that you have to understand in talking to these patients and being able, and this is interesting too, the fact that you guys understand dental, because you're on the phone, you are representing these practices. So tell me how that works, because that's probably a big hang up. A lot of people hang up phone that a lot of people have. I totally did not do that.
It totally comes with the notes. And that allows us to be able, because we're remoting in, we can see the past notes. And we leave notes every time we make a call. If somebody picks up and they don't schedule, we're very detailed in the notes of why it doesn't happen. So, when we get people on the phone, it's not uncommon to hear an agent say, hey, Dave, Notice that you had to move your last appointment because you weren't feeling well. Hope you're doing better. If you're feeling better, let's get you in right away. Now we have a hook. We're addressing their last conversation. They know that we know them. We know them more than just a name and a phone number. We're addressing past things that have happened. Oh, hey, I know you came in for a filling, but you still need to get your teeth cleaned. When we can pull that information out from the notes, we are as seamless a part of the office as the patient would ever think. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, oh, I'm excited to meet you the next time that we come in. And it's like, well, you're really not going to meet us, but you'll meet the office staff. It'll be great.
Yeah. We can't wait to meet you too.
Yeah. Or you have that day off. But yeah, we'd love to have you in the office.
Yeah, but that's huge. I think a lot of people do like the idea of the phone because it's community based. It is that personal touch. It's the fear of not knowing what to do. A lot of times I have offices talk about call scripts, right? They want a call script. They want to be able to have some kind of direction. So that's what was so interesting to talk to you. Be like, oh my gosh, they don't even need the call script. They can have their team focus on what they're focusing on and have experts actually knock out these calls for them and understand how when those tough questions come up, to actually understand how to answer and how to keep it going. That is an expertise that you have to identify and train on versus just being like, I don't know. I'll call you back.
We do customer service, or we do a lot of maintenance where we're listening to phone calls, talk about things that an office can't do. What dentist wants to go home and listen to an hour worth of calls to make sure that the scripting is going right? They don't have time for that. We're perfecting something that needs to be done, and it needs to be done in a timely fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. And a hard thing, to like have to identify that. You need a third party. Doctors don't have time to think about it or listen to it or even have the experience on it, right? When it comes to whether it's calls or marketing campaigns, I always tell doctors, don't expect me to place an implant and I won't expect you to send a campaign out. So I wouldn't expect them to listen to video or phone calls and determine if it's a good call or a bad call. I mean, obviously you can determine that just based on basic customer service, but sometimes you're going to fall with your team sometimes, right? Just because they answered it accurately. That is right. Yeah, but the patient technically is always right. You have to be able to answer it in a way where it converts them and makes them loyal or have those tough conversations that a lot of times you just aren't. You're supposed to be focused on clinical. You're supposed to be helping the patient while they're there. And it's just a different work.
Their job is to perfect what's going on in the mouth. Yes. Let me get them into your chair. If we can get them into your chair, you can do the rest. We're good at what we do. You guys are great at what you guys do for the texting and email. Like it's amazing the response that you get back. And that's why we work so well together, is because I'm not competing with you. You're not competing with me. The whole point is to keep that office as full as possible. Yes. And so why wouldn't you cast all of your nets into the water to make sure that, hey, if anybody's going to slip through the cracks, they're going to have to really, really try to slip through the cracks. Because there's no excuse that you didn't feel reached out from a mailer. You didn't get an email. You didn't get the text. You didn't get our phone call. At that point, they just don't want to come in. Like, hey, that's fine too, but I gave you my best effort.
Absolutely. Everybody has it's a match made, right? Like you either are with them or not. And if they're not loyal to your practice, you don't want them anyway. And that's fine. Then you can alleviate those efforts and activate their records and move on and stop putting those marketing efforts into it. Instead, you can focus on the ones that are loyal to your practice. And I think a big thing too is determining how people like to be communicated with. There are capabilities in your management software and your communication software, and you're able to determine, hey, this patient specifically said, I want to be only communicated with via phone or via text or via email, and I only want to be told about these certain things. Make that personalized experience. Like they will love you for life for that, because you are actually catering to their needs, and you not only listened, but you acted on it and said, oh, I'm only going to call those phones. Heck, I bet those notes would be really nice for you to know exactly who's gonna actually prefers phones versus a text, or some people are gonna rather just book it all through their phone as well. And that you need to be able to write those notes and determine that to cater to each individual patient, but also do it in a way that's efficient. You don't want to also go crazy trying to cater to everybody, but by having some of these implemented, you can automate it and save yourself sanity in the process.
Absolutely. I mean, we put notes in all the time that says, hey, don't call this person. They just want text or email.
Yeah.
Great. That means you guys know next time you send out your email campaign that these guys want to be in there. So, we're all about notes. We're all about making sure everybody knows what's going on and being transparent, because again, we're only here to help the dentist, so whatever we can do to get that schedule full, that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely. And whatever we have to do in that regard, it's everybody responds differently to different communications. Mm-hmm. So to put all your efforts into one bucket is just not going to be effective. You have to have every single one open. And that's why it's so great partnering with different people to understand what their focus is in order to be successful. And then you can definitely put all those efforts out without actually having to do it, because the doctor's focus is clinical and everybody else should be able to strive together to make sure that, the schedule's full, no matter the schedule, whether it's doctor or hygiene, to be everybody successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Pete, do you have any other tips or advice that you would give to practices that you've noticed over the years of working or in call centers, or any tips that you want to give out? Yeah.
So to anybody who says, hey, the Recall Pros, that sounds great, but I'd love to do it on my own. I tell everybody the same thing. Again, this industry is driven 100% off of analytics. So whatever you're going to test, stay consistent with it. So if you're going to do calls, then you set people aside and say, okay, from 10 to 12, you're going to dial, and you're going to dial this many people, or you're going to dial from 4 to 8, but you have to sacrifice and know that that's the only task that person can do. Don't ask them to do anything else, and you get a count of how many calls are made. Because if your office says, I'm going to do this on my own, and you're not collecting stats, you don't know the average length of the phone call, you're not recording the phone calls, you're not seeing how many dials go out, how many are bad numbers. If you're not collecting that information, you're shooting in the dark. Absolutely. So my suggestion to anybody is, hey, even if you don't think picking up the phone is hard, if you don't have the stats, you'll never be able to crack the code, because you're just shooting blind. So anybody, and I'm sure you'll say the same thing to people with text messaging and email blasting, you can send that stuff out all day, but if you don't know your open rate, if you don't know, how many people responded, you'll never be able to improve. So whatever you do, stay consistent. Make everybody use the same exact script, because then you'll know why one dialer is working better than the other. I can tell you personally, the agents that have the worst schedule rate, it's because they start to deviate on the script that works. Don't let them make it up. Come up with something that you know will work and repeat it. Rinse, wash, and repeat. And some people will think, oh, Pete, you're giving away the secret sauce. Honestly, I just know that people don't have the time.
Yeah.
You don't have the time to micromanage that. There's just so many things going on. So you can continue to shoot in the dark if you only have to fill 5 appointments a month. But if you're in a point where you need 30, 40, 50, 60 appointments a month, you better have some data to back that up. So whatever you do, just make sure that you have the stats and the analytics to back up your decisions.
Oh, that's so strong, because if you're doing something just to do it, then what's the point? You have to have goals, and you have to justify the numbers to back that up. You mentioned script too, not to throw you off, but I'm curious, what would you determine as a good, how can people get started with their own call script? How can people actually figure out what is going to be that converting? Because you have to start somewhere in order to determine if it's working or not.
Yeah. The best thing I can tell you is tell your patients what to do. Yeah. Don't ask, tell them. Yeah. Because if you ask them, they will bow out 9 out of 10 times. Tell them they need to be in. Tell them you're expecting them in, and they will respond much differently than if you ask. So
that's literally what we say. Tell them exactly what to do and make it easy for them to do it, and it's done. If you're asking them, you're creating that well, should I do it? And no, you are the expert. You know, as a dentist, as a practice, they are due for an appointment. They have to come in for their appointment to stay healthy and keep them on track. Why would you help them question that? When you question it, they question it. Tell them and make it easy to act. Oh,
yep.
I'm so happy.
I mean, people don't like to hear it, and it might not be the most popular thing to hear, but people do what they're told.
Yeah.
We've been trained like that since children. Do what your mom and dad tell you. Do what the experts say. If they tell you you need to have this done, then I need to have it done. So if you're going to tell your patients you're past due on a cleaning, you need to get in here, more times than not, they will follow along with that. But again, you have to be able to feel the person out, know exactly, what tone they're coming with before you make that jump. So reading tone is really a big deal. And the other one that I would say is people can hear a smile.
Yes.
When you're on the phone, you can hear a smile. It sounds really silly, but if you do it, next time you hop on the phone, try to talk to people and smile and try and talk without smiling, and you will have a completely different tone and pitch to your voice. So if you have people in the office and they're calling and they don't want to call, the people on the other side of the phone know that they don't want to be on that phone.
Absolutely.
So be happy while you're doing it and be direct, and it can be done.
And force that smile, and it makes you smile. I mean, I feel like if you just smile by yourself naturally, you can't help but hold it. It's cool. Come on, yeah.
I mean, I could tell when you and I talked. I mean, it was smiles all around. I knew I was smiling. I know you were, because again, we found this perfect match, and it was like, oh man, we got to tell everybody this is going to. But you knew, it was very easy.
Absolutely. And it makes you want to be part of the conversation. If I know someone's on the other line and they're not happy and they don't want to be on the call, please get me off this phone call as fast as possible. Or if I can't crack a joke and you still aren't smiling, oh, bless you. I don't want to be part of it. I'm going to want to hang up as fast as possible.
And then when you add in reading the notes, if a smiling person says, hey, Abby, I know 3 months ago you were going to come in, but you weren't feeling well. I hope you're feeling better. Now you've shown interest in me. You're a happy person. I want to be there.
Yeah. Oh, you actually know me. Okay. Yeah. Now I'll give you the time of day, right? Like, oh, this is, and honestly, if I hear from my dental practice, it's community based. Like it's a small network. It's not like this big honcho's calling me and asking me how to vote or something, like a big, it's actually my dentist who I know who's down the road.
Extended car warranty. I get that one all the time. Take me off your caller list. I will, but it's your dentist. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, let's get scheduled.
Yeah. Okay, cool. This is a conversation I want to be part of. Not, do you have insurance? No. Leave me alone. Right? Yeah. Pete, this has been awesome. I want to have you every day because I just think this is so interesting and it just complements our services so much because we have you can have recordings and it's something is better than nothing, but just that personal touch. And, every time I talk to you, I just get just as excited as I was last time because it's so interesting. And I just really feel like you're in this cool niche that practices can thrive on. So if they do want to take advantage, if they don't want to do it by themselves and they do want to take advantage of the Recall Pros, they would, how can they get in touch with you?
So they can give me a call on 720-927-6756. That'll get you right to my office. Or you can go to the website, therecallpros.com, and you can schedule a quick 15-minute demo. Tell me a little bit about your office, what you need, how many appointments you're looking to go for. Again, we do month to month. We only do pay by performance. So whatever appointments we schedule, we bill out the beginning of the next month. So again, really, there's no risk. We have no setup fees. So if you want to give us a shot, let us schedule some appointments, come schedule a demo, give me a call, and I'd love to help you out any way I can.
Awesome. Well, I hope some people will definitely at least talk to you and have that conversation because I do think the phones are so powerful. We'll also provide a link in here too so you guys can actually reference that. And Pete, I'm sure we'll be talking in the near future as well. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining me again on Let's Eat with Abby. Again, it's every Wednesday right here on Facebook Live at 12 p.m. Central Time. Next week, I'm going to have our very own Miss Brooke Voss, and she is going to be talking about how we've done referral trainings and how common barriers with patient communications, how we achieved all of those, and how to retain patients for life. She is an amazing client success manager, and she's actually worked one-on-one with these practices. So I can't wait to have her on the show next week. And again, Pete, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. I hope to come back soon. It'll be awesome.
Definitely. Bye, everyone.
Bye.